Behold the might of Allah. This is a story that has traveled through generations, whispered in gatherings, recited from pulpits, and reflected upon by hearts seeking truth. It is not merely a tale meant to amaze, but a reminder meant to awaken. A reminder that all of creation belongs to Allah, obeys Allah, and can become a sign from Allah whenever He wills. Long ago, in a quiet land where people lived simple lives, there was a shepherd known for his honesty and humility. He owned only a small flock of goats, yet his heart was rich with faith. Every morning before the sun rose, he would pray, thank Allah for another day, and then lead his animals to graze. He spoke to them gently, treated them with care, and never forgot that they too were creations of the Most Merciful. To him, these animals were not just possessions, but trusts given by Allah. Among his flock was one goat unlike the others. It was calm, attentive, and always stayed close to the shepherd. While the other goats scattered, this one would stop when he stopped and move when he moved. The shepherd noticed this behavior but thought little of it, assuming it was simply the nature Allah had given the animal. One evening, as the sky turned orange and the wind grew still, the shepherd sat on a rock remembering Allah. His lips moved softly with dhikr, praising his Lord for sustenance, for guidance, and for peace. Suddenly, he heard a sound behind him. At first, he thought it was his own echo, or perhaps another traveler nearby. But then he heard it again, clear and unmistakable. Fear Allah, O servant of Allah. The shepherd froze. His heart pounded. Slowly, he turned around. The flock stood quietly, and the calm goat was looking directly at him. Its mouth moved once more. Worship Allah alone, and do not be among the heedless. The shepherd dropped to his knees, overwhelmed with fear and awe. His mind struggled to understand what his eyes were seeing and his ears were hearing. An animal, a goat, speaking words of truth, words that only a believer's heart could recognize as guidance. He wept, not from terror, but from humility. He knew instantly that this was not magic, nor madness. This was a sign from Allah, who says, be, and it is. The one who made the heavens speak, the earth testify, and the limbs of humans bear witness on the day of judgment. Was it so impossible for Allah to allow a goat to speak? The shepherd asked, trembling, by Allah, how can you speak? The goat replied, Allah gives speech to whom He wills. Soon, people will deny the truth, and signs will be shown to remind them. This is one of them. The shepherd prostrated on the ground, thanking Allah for allowing him to witness such a miracle. But the test was not over. The goat then said, go to the people and tell them what you have seen. Invite them to remember Allah before a day comes when reminders will no longer benefit. At dawn, the shepherd went to the village. His face was pale, his voice shaking, but his words were sincere. He told them everything. Some laughed, some mocked him, others accused him of lying. A few, however, saw the truth in his eyes and felt fear in their hearts. They followed him back to the fields. The shepherd stood before his flock and called out to the goat. The animal stepped forward. The people watched closely, some skeptical, some curious. Then, by the will of Allah, the goat spoke again. It reminded them of Allah's oneness, of accountability, of the life after death. It warned them not to be deceived by wealth or status. It spoke of a time when people would chase the world and forget their Creator. Cries erupted. Some people fell to the ground in sujud. Others ran away in fear. A few covered their ears, refusing to listen. The same sign produced different reactions, just as signs always do. Guidance is not forced, it is offered. Not long after, the goat fell silent. It returned to being as it was before, an ordinary animal. The miracle had served its purpose. The message had been delivered. The scholars later said that this event was a mercy and a warning. A mercy for those whose hearts were open, and a warning for those whose arrogance blinded them. Allah does not need grand displays to prove His existence. A leaf falling, a child being born, a soul departing in sleep and returning at dawn, all are signs. But when hearts harden, greater signs may appear. This story reminds us of something deeply important. Islam teaches that everything in creation worships Allah in its own way. The birds glorify Him in flight. The mountains praise Him in silence. The animals submit to His command without question. Only humans and jinn are given the choice to obey or disobey. And with that choice comes responsibility. When a goat speaks, it is not the goat that is extraordinary. It is the power of Allah that is being revealed. And when humans ignore reminders that come through the Quran, through prophets, through conscience, what excuse remains? Many people today ask for miracles. They say, If only we saw a sign, then we would believe. But history shows that signs do not benefit those who are not sincere. Pharaoh saw miracles and still rejected. People saw the moon split and still turned away. Belief is not born from spectacle alone. It is born from humility. This story is not meant to entertain alone. It asks a question of every listener. If Allah made an animal speak to remind people of the truth, what excuse do we have when the Quran speaks to us every day? When verses are recited clearly, when guidance is accessible, when reminders are constant. Perhaps the real miracle is not a goat speaking, but a human listening. In our time, distractions are everywhere. Screens glow brighter than stars. Noise drowns out reflection. People chase validation, pleasure, and status, forgetting that every breath is a gift and every soul will return to its creator. Signs still surround us, but we rush past them. This story calls us to slow down, to remember Allah in our daily lives, to treat even the smallest creation with respect, to understand that nothing is insignificant in the sight of Allah. The shepherd did not receive this sign because he was powerful or famous. He received it because he was sincere, because his heart was clean, because he remembered Allah when no one was watching. That is another lesson hidden within this story. If we want guidance, we must prepare our hearts to receive it. One day, the earth itself will speak. Hands and feet will testify. Time will run out. On that day, no miracle will be needed, and no excuses will be accepted. Until then, stories like this remain as reminders. Not to chase the extraordinary, but to recognize the truth that is already before us. May Allah make our hearts receptive to His signs, soften us with remembrance, and allow us to be among those who listen when truth speaks, even if it comes from a place we least expect. The days that followed the speaking of the goat were unlike anything the village had ever known. Word spread beyond the fields and mud houses, carried by travelers, merchants, and shepherds who repeated the story with wide eyes and trembling voices. Some added details, some removed them, but the core remained the same. A sign had appeared, and it had spoken of Allah. The village itself became divided. There were those whose hearts softened immediately. They began praying regularly, returning rights they had wrongfully taken, reconciling with family members they had cut off for years. Nights once filled with idle talk were now quiet with remembrance. The Quran, which had gathered dust in some homes, was opened again, its verses read slowly, as if for the first time. But there were others whose hearts hardened even further. They said the shepherd had trained the goat. They said it was an illusion, or collective imagination. Some claimed it was sorcery. Their pride could not accept that guidance might come through something so simple, so humbling. They feared that admitting the truth would mean changing their lives, giving up their injustices, their arrogance, their comfort in sin. The shepherd himself did not seek attention. After delivering the message, he returned to his quiet life. He did not profit from the story. He did not embellish it. When asked, he spoke only what he had witnessed, no more and no less. His calmness unsettled people more than dramatic speech ever could. One night, as he slept beneath the open sky, he dreamed. In his dream, he saw people walking toward a bright light, while others turned away despite seeing it clearly. A voice said, "Guidance is light, but eyes must choose to open." He awoke with tears on his face, understanding that the miracle was never about convincing everyone, but about offering truth. As time passed, the village elders called a gathering. Scholars from nearby towns were invited. They questioned the shepherd carefully, not to accuse him, but to understand. They observed his character, his consistency, his humility. They spoke to those who had witnessed the goat speak. Testimonies matched. No contradictions, no signs of deception. One scholar said something that silenced the crowd. "Do you find it difficult that Allah makes an animal speak, yet you do not find it difficult that He made you speak from a drop of fluid?" The people lowered their heads. The logic was undeniable. The scholar reminded them that in Islamic tradition, animals had spoken before. A wolf had spoken to a shepherd in a narration, reminding him of accountability. Ants had spoken in the time of Prophet Sulaiman. Birds understood commands. These were not fairy tales, but lessons preserved to teach humility. Creation obeys Allah perfectly. Only humans argue. Despite this, not everyone accepted the reminder. Some families packed their belongings and left the village, uncomfortable with the atmosphere of accountability that now lingered in the air. They preferred distance over introspection. Years passed. Children grew up hearing the story as part of their moral upbringing. Parents did not present it as entertainment, but as a responsibility. If Allah could make a goat speak, they would say, then never think he is unaware of you. The shepherd aged, his beard turned white, his steps slowed. The goat that had spoken lived a normal life and eventually died like any other animal. The miracle was never meant to be permanent. Signs come and go, but accountability remains. On his final days, the shepherd was visited by some of those who had once mocked him. Life had humbled them, loss, illness, and regret had softened their pride. They asked him to forgive them. He did, without hesitation. He reminded them gently that Allah's mercy is greater than any sin, as long as one returns sincerely. When the shepherd passed away, the village buried him with respect. No grand monument was built. No shrine marked his grave. Yet his legacy lived on in hearts that had changed direction because of a single moment of truth. This is where the deeper lesson of the story unfolds. People often think miracles are meant to suspend the laws of nature, but in Islam, miracles exist to restore balance to the human heart. They shake us awake. They interrupt our complacency. They remind us that the unseen is real, and that life is more than what we touch and see. The goat speaking was not the greatest sign in this story. The greatest sign was how people responded. Some transformed completely, others ran from it, and some acknowledged it, yet delayed change until hardship forced them to reflect. This mirrors humanity in every age. Even today, signs surround us. A near-death experience, a sudden loss, a prayer answered in an unexpected way, a verse that feels as if it was revealed specifically for you. These are quieter miracles, but often more personal. Yet many ignore them, waiting for something dramatic, something undeniable. But what is more undeniable than the certainty of death? Islam teaches that the world itself is a test. Ease and hardship are both examinations. When a sign appears, it increases the weight of responsibility. That is why not every generation is shown open miracles. If hearts reject after clarity, the consequences are severe. The villagers who accepted the sign understood this. Their faith was no longer inherited, it was chosen. Their worship became conscious, not habitual. They stopped asking, "What can I get away with?" and began asking, "What pleases Allah?" And that is the transformation every reminder aims to create. There is also a quiet warning in this story. If an animal can be chosen to deliver a message, then status, education, and power mean nothing without sincerity. Allah raises whom He wills and humbles whom He wills. The shepherd was unknown to the world, but known to the heavens. This should make every listener pause. Are we too proud to accept truth because of where it comes from? Do we reject advice because it comes from someone we consider beneath us? How often does guidance knock on our door, but we refuse to answer because it does not arrive in the form we expect? The goat spoke only briefly, yet its words echoed for decades. Meanwhile, the Quran speaks endlessly, yet many hearts remain unmoved. This contrast should disturb us, not because the story is strange, but because our response to guidance has become weak. Imagine if, on the day of judgment, we are asked why we ignored reminder after reminder. Imagine saying, "I was waiting for a miracle," while the Quran was recited around us, while signs appeared in our own lives, while conscience whispered in quiet moments. What will we say then? This story is preserved not to make us chase wonders, but to remind us of certainty. Allah is capable of all things. He is closer than we think. He speaks to humanity through revelation, through creation, through events, and sometimes, through means that shatter our expectations. The villagers who truly understood the sign did not talk endlessly about the goat. They talked about Allah. That is how you know a reminder was successful. When the sign disappears and only faith remains, the purpose has been fulfilled. As listeners today, we must ask ourselves, if we had been there, how would we have responded? Would we have bowed in humility, or argued in pride? Would we have changed our lives, or demanded another sign? Because in truth, our response now answers that question. May Allah protect our hearts from arrogance, make us attentive to His signs, and allow us to be among those who recognize truth even when it arrives quietly, unexpectedly, or through the smallest of His creations.